Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Friday everybody. I hope you've had a productive week and I wish you all a restful weekend ahead. We begin with US-China developments. The US-based Chicago Council on Global Affairs has just released its latest survey on perspectives on China. And in very much a sign of the times, the survey shows that, quote, American views of China have hit an all-time low in council polling, end quote. That is, China's perception in the US has hit rock bottom. The survey shows that Americans' views of China have dropped significantly even in the last 2 years, with the majority of people saying that the US should work to actively limit the growth of China's power. The poll, which asked participants to rate their feelings towards China from 0 to 100, found that Americans on average responded with 26, down from 32 in 2022, the lowest number recorded since the organization started polling in 1978. Before the two countries established diplomatic relations. Thus, it is the worst result in the history of PRC-US relations. The survey was conducted in June and July and released yesterday, Thursday. The survey had several key findings. A majority of Americans, 55%, say the United States should actively work to limit the growth of China's power, while 4 in 10, 40%, say that the United States should undertake friendly cooperation and engagement with China. Americans' top goals for US-China relations is avoiding a military conflict, 69%, very important, and maintaining the US technology edge, 60%. Half of Americans, 49%, view China as more influential than the US in Asia, 30% equally influential, and 21% US more influential. A majority of Americans, 56%, say US-China trade does more to weaken US national security, 39% more to strengthen. Roughly half, 47%, say US leaders are not giving the issue of US competition with China enough attention, including a majority of Republicans, 62%, and a plurality of independents, 46%. By contrast, half of Democrats, 50%, and 4 in 10 Americans, overall 40%, say US leaders are paying about the right amount. 8 in 10 Americans favor prohibiting US companies from selling sensitive high-technology products to China, 79% up from 71% in 2021, including large majorities across party lines. However, opinions on other limitations on US-China exchanges is far more polarized by partisanship, with Republicans consistently more supportive of reductions in these exchanges, while Democrats are opposed to such policies. Additionally, support for broad trade restrictions has declined from 2021, possibly because of greater concerns about costs following the experience of the higher inflation of the early 2020s. The survey concludes, quote, as the US-China relationship has moved from an era of engagement into an era of wide-ranging competition, American opinion has followed suit. Americans today view China far more negatively than at any previous point since the establishment of US-China diplomatic relations in 1979. View China as a rival rather than a partner, and say the United States should seek to limit the growth of China's power and influence in the world. Additionally, the extensive trade ties that bind the two largest global economies to one another are no longer seen as a benefit but instead a danger to US national security. In response, the public broadly supports subsidizing domestic production of a wide range of products, from high-tech semiconductors and electric vehicles to basic household consumer products, rather than importing them from China. Yet Americans remain pragmatic in their approach to China. Their top objectives in the US-China relationship are avoiding war and maintaining the United States' technological advantage. When given the option, Americans prefer a mix of competition and cooperation to either policy applied across the board. And despite concerns about the impact of US-China trade on American national security, Americans oppose significant reductions in that trade, given the costs it would impose on American consumers. This gives the next US administration a narrow line to walk. Should it want a more confrontational approach with Beijing, either over trade or China's territorial claims, it will have work to do to convince the public that the costs are worth it.
and that such an approach won't trigger an outright conflict between the two nations. At the same time, an administration seeking a more convivial relationship will have to assure the public that the United States remains focused on maintaining America's technological advantages, protecting US workers from what many Americans see as unfair competition from China, and supporting domestic production in key industries. End quote. Next up, as regular viewers know, Xi Jinping is in Russia this week for the BRICS summit, and he used the event to deliver a speech unpacking his worldview and China's rhetorical pitch to the world, describing a globe facing a choice between chaos or peace, saying, quote, "As the world enters a new period defined by turbulence and transformation, we are confronted with pivotal choices that will shape our future. Should we allow the world to descend into the abyss of disorder and chaos, or should we strive to steer it back on the path of peace and development?" End quote. We note that, of course, Vladimir Putin was in the audience listening to the speech. Xi Jinping proposed 5 policy directions for BRICS, namely, build a BRICS committed to peace, build a BRICS committed to innovation, build a BRICS committed to green development, build a BRICS committed to justice, and build a BRICS committed to closer people-to-people exchanges. Following this, Xi also gave a speech to the so-called BRICS Plus Leaders Dialogue, where he pitched his flagship foreign policy agendas, known in English as the 3 Gs, the Global Security Initiative, Global Development Initiative, and Global Civilization Initiative. We've explored these in previous videos. Of course, this all folds into Beijing's ongoing narrative push to present an alternative world order led by China to challenge the current Western one. Indeed, state media in China has been pushing this message hard. State-run China Daily, for example, in an English-language report today, wrote, quote, "For all the Western chatter about the Chinese and Russian leaders wanting to challenge the global order, their vision of a fairer and more just world order that has appealed to the global South is not one of confrontation. Dissatisfaction with the international political status quo, a post-World War II world order shaped by the US-led West, in which developing and emerging economies are significantly disadvantaged, is a key reason for the appeal of BRICS." End quote. As I've said before, China working with Russia and others to create a new world order to replace the Western one is not some conspiracy. It is policy, clearly and continuously articulated by Beijing and Xi Jinping. Next up, we return to US-China developments, looking now specifically at technology competition. But before we move into this, if you're enjoying today's episode of China Update or getting some value from it, I have a big favor to ask. That is just to like, and if you have not done so already and you think you'd watch another episode, subscribe and hit that bell notification icon so you're on top of these developments as they are released. Sharing with someone who you think would enjoy this sort of content is also a tremendous help. It is the only way in which this channel can grow and be shown to new people. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description for those who want to help keep the channel financially sustainable. Thank you so much. Last week, US-based outlet The Information published a report saying that the US Department of Commerce, quote, is looking into whether Huawei brought chips from Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company TSMC indirectly using intermediary companies with a different name to place orders on its behalf. End quote. Then this week, UK-based The Financial Times reported, quote, TSMC has recently notified the Commerce Department after a customer placed orders for a chip that resembled Huawei's Ascend 910B, end quote. This could be a big problem for the Taiwan-based advanced chip maker, but it's also a serious issue for US policymakers if Huawei is getting its hands on the most advanced chips in the world and getting around US export restrictions. As we just saw with the first part of today's video, restricting Chinese access to advanced technology and maintaining the US lead is considered a top policy priority by a majority of Americans. This week, UK-based Reuters, in an exclusive report citing unnamed sources, writes that TSMC notified the US that one of its chips had been found in a Huawei product after technology research firm Tech Insights took apart the product. revealing a possible violation of export restrictions on the Chinese company. The teardown was of Huawei's Ascend 910B. The 910B is viewed as the most advanced AI chip available from the Chinese company. The source quoted by the outlet did not identify the item, but said that TSMC chip was one within a multi-chip system. Reuters writes that Canada-based Tech Insights informed TSMC of the chip before publishing its findings in a report, prompting the Taiwanese firm to notify the U.S. Commerce Department a couple of weeks ago. TSMC, the world's largest contractor chip maker, said it had itself brought the issue to Washington's attention, expressing in an email statement, quote, "TSMC is a law-abiding company, and we are committed to complying with all applicable rules and regulations, including applicable export controls, in compliance with the regulatory requirements. TSMC has not supplied to Huawei since mid-September 2020. We proactively communicated with the U.S. Commerce Department regarding the matter in the report. We are not aware of TSMC being the subject of any investigation at this time." End quote. So, what is the U.S. Commerce Department doing about this? One possibility the department is looking into is whether Huawei bought chips from TSMC indirectly using intermediate companies with a different name to place orders on its behalf. The department is scrutinizing whether TSMC conducted the required Know Your Customer due diligence when accepting orders. Meanwhile, Huawei has launched its own homegrown Harmony OS Next. The fifth iteration of Harmony OS is said to have enhanced performance, improved system security, and a more seamless user experience compared to previous versions. Previously released versions of Harmony OS were partially built on the Android open source project AOSP. As a result, they required compatibility with some Android apps. However, the new Harmony OS Next is entirely self-developed with a fully independent foundation, or so the company claims. This means that it no longer supports Android-based applications and has been dubbed pure blood in China. However, critics have accused Huawei of completely ripping off Android with identical code bases. Richard Yu Chengdong, chairman of Huawei's Consumer Business Group, said at an event on Tuesday this week that Harmony OS Next already has 15,000 native applications and services. The number of native applications is 10 times higher than in June, when Huawei released a beta version of Harmony OS Next. According to Yu, quote, "We have carved out a new field in just 1 year and achieved what foreign ecosystems have been doing for over a decade." End quote. In addition to many Chinese apps, global apps running on the OS include Grab, the popular ride-hailing app in Southeast Asia, and Emirates, one of the two flag carriers of the United Arab Emirates. This development represents another step towards complete technological decoupling from US and other Western systems. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Friday, have a restful weekend, and I will see you all tomorrow.